1930s, so we're talking 39, working our way back to 30, the decade of the 30s. Awesome era of music, the swing era. Artists that spring to mind immediately are Duke Ellington, but there's lots of amazing artists, and it was the whole swing era and the whole jazz thing going on in America, of course, everything else. So some great stuff here. It's been a little trickier to find good sound to listen to, so we've had to sometimes do older tunes played in more modern eras, but the recording's better. Check them out, it'll be great. The world events of the time that we're thinking of well, first thing to mention is the movies. 1939, Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz. Very different movies, but you'll find they're both very long movies, and it appears as though in that period of time we were prepared to listen longer and spend longer at any form of entertainment. I've noticed that. I remember going to it with my friend, clearly not in the 30s, and realising how long Gone with the Wind was. The next movie I want to mention is 33, King Kong. Now, of course, that's been done a couple of more times. It was done in the 70s once, and it's been done by Peter Jackson. But the imagination of the creative people has always been there. Now, that was done by Merlin C. Cooper. 1939, the World Fair opened in New York. Why have I mentioned that? These World Fairs are very important as far as sharing of cultures. So it's nice to mention that we had a World Fair in New York, even though we were going into a pretty disastrous period of human history. 1937, Bell Labs 2-channel stereo recording. I find that really interesting because we were in the 70s, stereo recording and what people were doing that became huge, and to have a good stereo at home and everything was a big thing for us. The thing was that they'd invented stereo in 1937. It took us a while, but clearly probably because of needing to move further on than just 3-track recording. Okay, 1936, the first public television broadcast begins in London, November the 2nd. Interesting, public television, first time in 1936. We take it so for granted now, but one channel. 1935, AEG, magnetophone tape recording, basically reel to reel. First time we got some reel to reel recording going on, the quality of that and where that took recording of music to. Also thought I'd mention that in 1932 fiberglass was invented. Not that fiberglass would necessarily impact on music, but I did notice that fiberglass became big in the 70s when you're thinking about surfboards and boating and that sort of stuff, and yet it was invented so much earlier. There's something I've noticed with human being inventions. 1930, well, this invention had to be mentioned. This invention had to be mentioned because it was done by a banjo player. A muso invented scotch tape. Now, for all you musos out there who have used gaffer tape to the max, solved just about every problem you can with gaffer tape, it's probably no surprise to you that a musician invented scotch tape. Moving on. 1939, the start of World War II, September the 2nd of 1939, going into a pretty disastrous period for human being. We also, in 1937, the Hindenburg Disaster. I mentioned that, 6th of May it took place. Hindenburg airships were very popular for travel, were starting to become very popular for travel, very luxurious travel, and could have possibly changed the way we do things, except for the fact that they turned out to be flammable, and that brought about the disaster, and therefore changed. We couldn't clearly keep doing that; it was too dangerous. And then later on, we now have passenger jets. Okay, another thing for 1932, or another thing. In 1932, the IRD gets its man. Al Capone. The IRD brought him down. Just thought I'd mention that for all you those. Just thought I'd mention that the IRD always gets its man. The Great Depression. Now that was a big thing of the 30s and a sad thing of the 30s. We have learnt to deal with financial and economic fluctuation much better now, but in the 30s the Great Depression was disastrous and hurt us all. And it lasted for most of the 30s. 1938, Orson Welles did the first radio broadcast of War of the Worlds, the radio adaptation of the story War of the Worlds, which was later turned into a movie. Orson Welles did it in 1938 over the radio. It was on October the 30th. The reason I mentioned it here is because it started a panic. Everyone thought it was the truth. We really, at the stage, had the feeling that Mars was possibly a planet with some kind of life on it. Well, not some kind of life. We felt they were watching us. If you read the War of the Worlds, that's the opening line, isn't it? So yes, that was a very interesting thing. The other interesting thing to do with space and how we were placed and that sort of thing is I'll start that again. The other thing to do with space is time. Clyde Tombaugh, he discovered Pluto in 1930. February the 18th, 1930, discovered Pluto. Now, it's really to our credit that it didn't take us hugely long to get out there. We got out to Pluto, checked it out. This is 7.5 billion miles away. The fact that he discovered it at all is extraordinary, really, when you think of that. But we got out there in 2015 to check it out. So a human being is incredibly resourceful, amazing species. So yes, in 1930, Pluto was discovered. My favourite planet, yay! And it's been demoted. I'm over that now. So enjoy